There he is, the Hall of Fame head football coach and person, and Mack Brown, who joins us on 365 Sports. How are you staying busy and yet trying to enjoy at least something sort of a retirement?
Well, David, I've always said you don't retire, you rewire.
Okay, there you
If
go.
you retire, that means it's got tired in there, and it just sounds awful. So I never want to retire as such. But I'm glad we're out of the game. It's not the game I grew up in, and it's time for a lot of those younger guys to take it and move forward with it, and guys like me can still trying to help navigate it, and that will help. But I'm speaking quite a bit. I'm doing some consulting. I'm helping some younger coaches, that older coaches like Grant Taff and Coach Royal and Bo Schembechler and Bobby Bowden and Joe Paterno, and it just the names just go on and on, help me. And that's one of the things I committed to as I got older, is to help give back like they did to me. And then I'm looking at doing a couple of podcasts in the fall. So I don't want to get tied down. I'm spending a lot of time with family. I'm traveling a lot, but having a lot of fun at the same time.
So the house settlement came down. I know it was something that you, when you were coaching, had to be abreast of. Do you think that it will change things enough to where it will calm them down, or does more work need to be done?
I think more work needs to be done. There's too many question marks. We're still not sure about roster size. You start looking at tampering. You start looking at transfer portal. I do think that it will help the schools that didn't have NIL money, because if they want to play in the game now, they've got to come up with $20 million. I'm really concerned about the Olympic sports, just in general, because so much money is going to go to football and basketball. Me being a football guy, but I was also an athletics director at one time, and I'm concerned about some of those sports, and will they be fully funded? Will they be able to keep them? So that's a concern. And I'm really not sure what the evaluation of the $600 or more with the collective is going to mean. What does that mean? Does that still mean that a quarterback gets $1.5 million for going to a car dealership and signing autographs and speaking? It seems entirely too gray to me, and I think everybody needs answers, and they need some urgent answers, because athletics directors now have a horrible situation. Boosters are in a really tough spot because we've got donor fatigue, and they're being asked for money from every sport, and that's very, very difficult. And you start looking at there's 6, 8, 10 schools, maybe 6 that are brand names that have a lot of money, and it's working for them. So it really won't affect them very much. They're going to be able to buy players, and they won't be losing them because they've got money. And at the same time, if a non-brand school wants to really step up and commit to football, this is really the best time ever to have a chance to get in the game. But a large majority of the schools are just going to slip back, and I'm really, really concerned about that. It's we may not see the same level of football at those schools we have before if they become feeder systems. And I also feel like that we need to start making rules at each level of competition. The Power 4 schools need to have their own ruling body. And when you've got a Division II and Power 4 talking about rules at the same time, it's a very, very difficult thing to make it work.
Coach, you mentioned mentoring younger coaches, keeping in touch with them, and obviously, as you point out, there's a lot on their plates nowadays. Who are some of the coaches that maybe you do mentor or talk to on a regular basis, or guys that you enjoy chatting about the game and just life with?
I was so lucky to be a head coach for 36 years, so I know just about all of them. I've coached against a bunch of them. They were assistants when I was a head coach at times. Being the president of the American Football Coaches Association when Coach Taff was involved as the chairman of the board and the CEO, you just get involved with all the coaches. So many of them will call, and I'd rather not mention their names, because
Sure.
That's one of the things that I do is make sure that I'm very discreet with their names and their conversations, because a lot of them would rather people not know that they've reached out.
Mac, has the game itself become too territorialized, if that's even a word, with the conference pride? The SEC and the Big Ten obviously have separated with the money and the power. I know when you had success at UT and the Big 12 was really, really good, but I don't remember that actually ever being a thing. Is that just something that we've gotten into the last few years?
Overwhelmed by your inbox? Clean Email is here to help. Organize, clean, and manage your emails with powerful automation tools. Say goodbye to spam and clutter and enjoy a stress-free inbox. Try Clean Email today at cleanemail.com. That's CLEAN email.com.
David, if you'll remember, we were down to days where Texas Tech, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State were considering going to the Pac-12.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was days. And then Longhorn Network came in, everything settled down, and then Texas A&M and Missouri leave. So I think when I saw that the ACC and the Big 12 didn't get the same amount of money in the playoffs as the Big 10 and the SEC, I thought we've got problems, because if we're all even as an entity in college football, why wouldn't everybody get the same amount of money? So I think there's a lot of things that will happen over the next 4 or 5 years. You'll continue to see realignment issues. It looks like we're starting to see, is there going to be this group that's going to break off that's going to pay a lot of money? And then some schools don't care enough about football. Some others don't have enough money. So what will happen with them? I think we're headed more toward an NFL model with collective bargaining and player unions and salary caps. And we're going to see contracts for each player. And the players will become more like coaches. They'll have buyouts if they leave and go to another school. So I think we're headed in that direction quickly. The one of the problems is that when Congress gets involved, there's a lawsuit every time the NCAA tries to make a decision. So we've got to get everybody in the same room and get a lot of smart people together and put some common sense into this thing, because we've kind of lost who we are.
You've heard of the fact that you mentioned it, that there could be some separation of an X amount of schools that go play at a different level. How much could that hurt college football, and could you lose fans if only 32 or 40 teams play for the so-called national title?
Yeah, I think it will really hurt fans. If we've had a great deal with college football. We didn't pay the players and we didn't pay the parents coming up enough that we got ourselves in this mess, because college football and universities, conferences made a lot of money off of college football and college sports for years. And all we had to do was give a $100,000 annuity to the players when they graduated as a reward for graduation to get them started in their life, $150,000, whatever it was. We could have very easily paid for the parents to come to games. Even before they could have come to bowl games. And so we made it tough. And I can see why players and parents were upset. When I played, you got $15 a month, and that's the way it was for years. And that was called laundry money. Mm-hmm. So we got ourselves behind, and now we're trying to figure it out for the players. We're trying to figure it out for the parents. The donors have donor fatigue, because so many of my friends at the 4 places I coached are top donors, and they're being called for money all the time. And they said they need caller ID, so they won't answer anymore. So, but where's it going to stop? And then when the House settlement that was supposed to be settled in April wasn't settled till now, money just kept pouring in. And I've talked to ADs that said right now it's legal to buy players. So we haven't been consistently good in our lives here at our universities. So I've told our football and basketball coach, go buy every player that you can buy. And one of these days they're going to come to their senses and they're not going to let you buy them anymore. So while you can buy them, let's go buy them and make sure that we can compete at the highest level, because when they start choosing sides and they start determining who's going to be in that upper level group, it's going to be very obvious by the commitment that the university made.
You know, there's a lot of conference tribalism right now, Mac, which I think winds up being silly, especially in what you said, a free agency era. You have coached in the Big 12. You've coached in the ACC, spanning a long time. Now, most recently, the ACC. Do you think that those arguments hold as much water, or is it just we've been so conditioned as people in college football to be like, well, this conference is definitely really good? Or do you see it differently from the perspective on the field?
You go back to the College Football Association with Chuck Ninus, and that's when decisions started being made over TV. And right now, decisions are being made because of money. And with the current climate in college sports, you've got to have money. So if you're losing money, which most of the universities that play college football lose some money, if you're losing it and then they tell you got to come up with 20 million more, where does it come from? And then the collective outside, you're asking dealerships and businesses and boosters for more money. So where does it stop? And like I said, for the first time in my life, I've seen that the NFL, their complete organization guidelines make sense. And right now they have a lot better game, in my estimation, with their organization than we do in college football. And we're going to have to look very closely at what that means. We were looking last year on our staff. We had 3 ex-NFL players on our staff. And I was asking them at midseason, what does salary cap mean to us? And they said that means if your left tackle's really good and he's asking for $1.4 million and your right guard and your right tackle are good, they're not as good, but they want $700 each, and you don't have it, you're going to have to decide, do you keep the left tackle and find another right guard and right tackle, or do you move the right tackle to left tackle, keep the guard and find you another player? Because there's just so much money to go around, and the coaches are making more than they've ever made before. They've got a tremendous amount of pressure because of the money that people are putting into it. People are firing coaches faster than ever before. But you're having to make a decision with that player on your team. What's he worth? And for the first time, we've always said, what's he worth as a starter, a second teamer, a third teamer? What's he worth as a walk-on? But right now, the value is how much money do you pay him? And even when a young guy goes in the portal and you're sitting there, what is it? It's not what he's worth. It's what is he worth to you, and what do you have to pay to get him? And that's where it's very, very tough for coaches trying to make those decisions and still keep some camaraderie in your locker room, where it's a tight-knit bunch with a good culture.
By the way, Mack Brown and the great Mack Brown and Vince Young will be August the 19th in Waco with the Lone Star Luncheon, looking back at that great team 20 years ago, the 2005 Texas team that won the national title. So with all of what you had when you were at UT, when you arrived, the 98 team, Ricky Williams, et cetera, and you guys, it took about 3 or 4 years. You were good, and then you went over the top with it. What would you be able to do with that same setup and then today's college football rules?
Well, since there basically aren't any rules.
Okay, yeah.
The teams that have money are the ones that are going to make it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just it. And fans don't want to hear that don't want to give money. But if you can buy players at a very high level, and then you can maintain your roster, because that's the other thing that's a problem, is maintaining the roster. When you get there, one of your players plays great. There's people that are hiring staff members just to look at other teams and scout their team and see which players that they would want off your team. And so you get a great player, you want to, how long are you going to play him in the fourth quarter? You want people to see him. So, and poor group of 5 coaches. I mean, that has become just an absolute feeder system. I mean, their teams play great and everybody's watching them. And that they said that at one time, guys, it was interesting that you're playing a team that's got a great tight end on the other team, and he's not at your level. He's a lower level. the head coach now walks over and speaks to the tight end before the head coach on the other team said, man, you're a great player. If you ever went in the portal, whew, there'd be a lot of people after you. So it's just crazy what's going on. And a lot of people are talking about tampering. The tampering's horrible. And you can't prove it because it's done through agents now. And some are lying about it. I was asked today about somebody getting this much money, and I said, no, nobody's going to get that much money. So it's and that's the other thing. I wish we could see what everybody's getting.
Mm-hmm.
I wish it was transparent. And then we knew exactly what every player was getting. And that would be better for the coaches in a strange way, because when a young guy is not telling the truth, they're paying me this. And then you got that agent coming to your collective and saying, well, you're paying that safety this much, and saying, no, you're not. He's not making that much money. He just said he was.
Do you have time to even coach anymore? I know you have the general managers, and they have all these staffs that have exploded with Nagy now at Oklahoma and others that do. Sometimes they have time to even coach.
Well, it's very difficult, because as much as you would like to say, I'm going to coach, man, I'm going to stay away from all the other stuff. The agent won't call you, but he'll call your general manager. He'll call the collective. And at some point, somebody's got to come and ask your opinion. And you've got to do that. It's one thing that I have enjoyed for the first time in my life, is not having a phone in my ear all the time with a negotiation, whether it was recruiting or whether it's NIL or it's just crazy what's happening right now to coaches. And there's two portals. There needs to be one, so they can transfer after spring practice. I was told, David, that Cal lost 5 running backs.
Mm-hmm.
After spring practice. That's what happened. How do you get 5 running backs? You can't go find 5 that'll replace the 5 that you've got. So it's definitely a year-round business. And I was on the Nike trip with a lot of the coaches this year, and it's just hard to be happy, because they're absolutely worn out. They've got no time away from the sport, and it's easy to say they're being paid. You're still a human being, and you've still got to have a quality of life. And even now with the national championship game, January 20th this year, there were players coming in to those schools to visit while they were in the playoffs. The transfer portal was still live, so players were leaving their teams while they were in the playoffs. There were people coming as early enrollees, so you were having to leave your practice and go talk to the new recruits that were coming in that could come to your playoff game, but they couldn't dress out, and they couldn't be at the game, but they could practice if they had already enrolled in school. So there's a whole lot going on right now, and multitasking is at an all-time high for the coaches.
I was just looking through the recruiting classes that built your 2005 team, Mac, and you guys had some, always top 10, depending on the service, but a couple of number ones in there. Have you ever sat back and thought about the value, like monetarily now, adjusted for inflation, of what that team would have cost? And even Texas would have probably been like, dang, guys, this is expensive.
Well, Vince Young and I are, and he's like a extended family member of ours. We are coming to the Sports Hall of Fame Lone Star Luncheon, and we'll talk about the Sports Hall of Fame, which is so important in Texas, and it's so impressive for the people that are in the Hall of Fame. I was so honored to be put in that group. But Vince Young said one day to me, Coach, if they'd had NIL when I was playing, I'd still be playing. And I think that's true, because Vince would still be making a whole lot of money.
Yeah, and heck, some guys play 8 or 9 years, so he could have played 8 or 9 years or something like. Where were you on the Vince Young touchdown run to win the national championship? I know obviously you're on the sideline. What was that like? Was that a blur? Did everything stand still? What was that moment like for you?
David, a lot of people ask me the question because I showed no emotion when he scored. And I've said we had to go for 2 because we were up by 1, and they had a really good field goal kicker, and we had to kick off to Reggie Bush. Mm-hmm. And there were 19 seconds left. So in the coach's mind, good, we scored. What's next? We'd already told them when we score, we were going to go for 2. We already had the play called. I was so afraid guys would leave the bench area and we'd get a 15-yard penalty on the 2-point play, and then we couldn't make it. So there were a lot of things going on in my mind at that time. And then when it was over, it was just craziness all over. And I will say Pete Carroll was so gracious. I finally found him, and he said it's really tough to lose a national championship game. Only two get to play, and there's a winner in the other team. And he said, but you've got a great team, and you deserve to be the national champion. So congratulations. And then I couldn't find Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart, and I always tried to find the best players, and especially the quarterbacks of the other team. And when I got in the locker room and I was talking to our team, somebody said, Coach, before you start, there's a couple of guys that want to say something to you. And I walked back to the door, and it was Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush. And they said, Coach, we missed you on the field, and we just wanted to tell you that you guys have a great football team, and you deserve to win this game. So congratulations. And I thought that was from all three of those folks, just real class.
So would you have been maybe more excited on the Lindale White stop you made than Vince? Because right in that moment, like you just said, I'm just thinking there's 19 seconds left. Reggie Bush is back there. We got to kick the ball in his general direction. And then at least with Lindale White, you're like, hey, we're getting the ball. Like, let's go.
I was excited, but again, you got to score.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'm thinking about what formation do we need? We had 2 minutes left. How many timeouts do you have? What plays can you run to get the ball out of bounds? We got to go for 2. If we score, got to tell them we got to go for 2. So you're haven't won a national championship in 35 years, and you've got 2 minutes to get that done. As a head football coach on the sideline, it's really interesting that you've got so much going through your head that you're talking to either of the staffs when you can flip the phone back and forth, and you really had a special team staff as well. But you go from just talking to Gene Chizik, and it's 4th and 1.5, and you got a chance to win a national championship. You stop them. And I remember Gene said, what if I said, bring them all. I wanted to say bring all 13, but bring 11.
Yep.
And put them all at the line of scrimmage. And he said, what if they throw it? And I said, then I'll go tell Pete, congratulations, great call. So they're not going to be back covering them. And I said, and Lindale White's going to get it. He's gained 250 yards. So we haven't stopped him all night. So he's the guy. We had done a lot better job on Reggie Bush. And then Michael Huff, they penetrate. Michael Huff hits him in the backfield and gets the stop. So I immediately go from there to, okay, offense, make sure we got 11, time going for 2 if we score. I always said when we score, not if we score. So it's just amazing the number of things that a head coach has to think about on the sideline. And you've got your play caller, and you'd like for him to be able to call the plays. And I call plays for a long time, and it's very difficult to have a conversation with a head coach or the assistants and call plays. So we always tried to let the guy that was up there call, because we would be in that position with a 1-minute offense every day in practice at the end. So we finish practice. So we've done this. And Vince is so upbeat and so positive. He came down to the defense on the 4th and 1 and said, get us a stop, man. You get 1 stop, we win a national championship. And then when the offense was coming back on the field, Vince said, we're going to score, man. Let's go win us a national championship. And he just had a big smile on his face. And it really relaxed and gave confidence to the rest of the offense and the teammates on the sideline.
It was phenomenal. And sometimes he would be running, and it doesn't look like he was running, and it was just gaining more yards from anyone trying to try to even, if they could even think about catching him. You went to Florida State, played at Florida State. You know how long of a drought Bobby Bowden had to deal with. You know the droughts that some other coaches had to deal with. And I say that word drought. That's not fair, because they were still winning at a high level. Osborne at Nebraska, among others. Did 2005 complete you? Would you have still been fulfilled had you not won a national title at UT?
No. No, I don't think so. It's another great question, David. Right after the game, the next morning, in fact, I tried to get Coach Royal to come out to the stage with me and accept the national championship trophy, and he sent word through Bill Little, which we all loved, and said,
Oh, yeah.
"Nope, this is Mack's time. Tell him to enjoy it." And then we're walking off the field, and Miss Edith, in her 80s, is standing up on a ladder with adhesive tape, putting a 4 over the 3 national championships that are written on the equipment truck. So we're trying to be careful and get her down. But the next morning, they give you 6 trophies after the national championship. And I was walking with Coach Royal, and I said, "Coach, what does this mean in my life?" And he said, "Oh, it's really hard to get here. When you get here, only one of the 2 wins. And the other one they forget about. They don't even remember he played. They don't even know who the teams are." And he said, "So you've done something that very few people will ever do in their life." He said, "It means so much to your university and the state." And he said, "The problem you got is now you and everybody else going to want to do it again next year, the next year, the next year. And it's really hard to do." So, and I think he was right without question. But he also said, now you got to be more careful what you say, because more people are going to listen. They're going to think you're smart.
Yeah. Couple more questions, Coach, and we appreciate your time. Mack Brown with us.
It is like, even just as a fan, Mac, I can tell you, and look, we're fellow FSU alums, you and I, and the 3 that FSU has won, every time they don't, like, I feel like I ordered steak and got a hamburger, even though those are tough seasons, right? Because it just tastes so much better. But I guess in the mid, like, was it easier? Like, once you did it, was it easier? Like, okay, we've done it. Now I know how to build it. And then you could worry about winning it when you got to that point, because it was never hanging out there over you anymore.
Yeah, it is. But there again, we're number 1 in the country, and we lose to Tech in Lubbock, and lose a chance to win another national championship. We're playing Alabama for the national championship in 2010. Colt gets hurt on the 5th play of the game. Or I still think to this day, and it doesn't matter because he got hurt, but I still think we would have won another national championship in that year. So what you do is your goals, your when you haven't won one for 35 years, it's a dream to win a national championship. It's a goal to win a conference championship. When you win one, now it's a goal to win the national championship. And Urban Meyer wins his first national championship. He calls me and says, "What do you think?" And I said, "Quit. Leave. Go somewhere else and win another one, because now all people are going to expect this for you to do this again every year." But it's wonderful that one of the things that I've enjoyed doing so much is this team 20 years ago won the national championship. They're still very close. They've had luncheons. They're talking about movies about the season. They've had panels together. They've had dinners. So I've spent a lot of my time just going back and being with them and reflecting and just talking about that year and how much fun it was. And it's funny that those guys were so good, and they were, I mean, their culture, their camaraderie, their friendship, it was so good. Most of them are successful now, and they're still very, very close friends. And that's another thing I'm worried about. I'm worried about too many transfers not graduating. And I'm also worried that we're not going to have that friendship, that bond that team had in 05, because people are transferring. You transfer 4 times, you're not going to have a home. You're not going to have the same friends. Fans won't know who their teams are. So I'm concerned about that moving forward, and it makes me even more concerned because the 2005 team was so close, and they're so close to this day. They do business together. They hang out together. I mean, it's like they're still in college having fun, and that's been a joy to watch them.
My last thing for you, the Aaron Ross, Tim Crowder, Matthew Melton, and I know there were others, but I remember covering those young men when they played at John Tyler. And I remember that Aaron Ross had to go through the adversity of the clearinghouse and how that devastated him and how you handled it. He always talked about that, Mac, of how you handled that time. And you're right, the relationships and the memories and all of that. You hope we don't lose that, but I do think that eventually that there's not going to be as many of those great stories along the way.
No, we've got a better chance at places like Texas where most of the players will stay because they can get a better situation at Texas than they can transferring. But a lot of the situations just are going to lose their best players every year. And even at North Carolina, David and guys, we would lose our backups because they wanted to start. We didn't have any money. So they could go play somewhere else and make more money. So it was even hard to keep your depth. So I worry about that. When you transfer, there's about a 63% chance that you graduate if you transfer one time because some of your classes don't transfer. So can you imagine transferring a second time, a third time, a fourth time, or a fifth time? They're not going to graduate. They won't have a home. They won't have a relationship with boosters that can help them get jobs. And they'll make more money in the NIL up front than they will when they graduate. And I'm really worried about mental health. And that sounds like an old coach, but I mean, we're still in this about the players. And I'm really, really concerned that if we get away from degrees and we get away from the importance of the degree, that's when they feel good about themselves. That's when they have opportunities to get jobs, and they get jobs with the boosters that they had relationships with while they were at school. And if they're at 5 different schools, they're not going to have that relationship.
Yeah, and I brought this up, the progress to a degree, which was supposed to be a big deal. And I know that I brought it up, and Craig and Paul said, well, they can just look at a computer, but I still wonder if they're slipping through the cracks when it comes to that too.
David, last year we had the #1 APR, which is retention rate for graduation, like graduation rates. Last year in the ACC, we were tied for 3rd nationally with Northwestern, and nobody even cared.
Yeah.
So that's where we are. We've got to make that important again because we've got to make the players important, not just how much money they get.
Please tell Sally we appreciate giving us the time you gave us, and you guys have a great rest of your night. We appreciate it, Mac. Thank you so much, and don't stop trying to help turn this game around and make it a better game into the future. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, guys, and we'll see you on August 19th.
Yes, sir. August 19th at the Texas Sports Hall of Fame, the luncheon with Vince Young and Mack Brown.